Hello and a very warm welcome to ET Auto and to this very exclusive World EV Day special panel discussion on the theme of building a self-sufficient Indian EV ecosystem. How far are we, or how far is the goal? As we all know, we are in disruptive times which are equally exciting and unpredictable at the same time. The automotive, or which is more often now referred to as the mobility industry, is undergoing a transition like never before in all fronts. A key among them is in terms of the energy mix, and that is being driven to a great extent, if not by the only reason of addressing the global environmental degradation challenge that we are facing across the globe. So, in this context, the energy mix, the changing energy mix is also more important. The energy mix towards tilted more towards renewables and clean mobility solutions. And when you talk about uh, clean and options, of course, in the current scenario, e- electric vehicle technology is the most advanced or the most mature. Is still evolving, but among the options which is available, it's the cleanest, at least at the tailpipe level. Of course, it's also a kind of topic of debate if you look at the cradle to grave picture. But when it comes to mobility as at the tailpipe level, it is the cleanest option as of date. And other options are also emerging. But when it comes to any discussions around clean mobility, we cannot ignore electric vehicle technology. And as I said, in the current scenario, that is the leading technology option, which is the most mature. What better day than the World EV Day to discuss electric vehicles, the evolution of the technology, the role of the government, and the evolving ecosystem. And especially in the Indian context, when it is said that India has a chance to be a global EV hub, much stronger than what it is in the ICE vehicle or the internal combustion engine vehicle space. And a self-sufficient ecosystem is but very, very important. To discuss this, it's my privilege and honor to uh, welcome all our esteemed panelists to this very exclusive panel discussion, starting with Mr. Diego Graffi, who is the Chairman and Managing Director of Piaggio India, Mr. Mahesh Babu, an industry veteran, and also the CEO of Switch Mobility India and the COO of Switch Mobility Global. And we are also joined by Pankaj Sharma, who is the co-founder and MD of Log9 Materials, very key component of the overall EV mix, I would say, of the overall EV pie. And we will soon be joined by Anand Kulkarni, Vice President at Tata Passenger Electric Mobility. And now it's also my pleasure to welcome my colleague and editor of ET Auto, Nabil Khan. So thank you, gentlemen, for accepting our invitation and joining on this very special day of World EV Day to discuss what else but electric vehicles and the EV ecosystem. So as I mentioned earlier, the theme today is building a self-sufficient Indian EV ecosystem. How far is the goal? So let me just request each of the esteemed panelists to share in not more than a minute, maybe, your initial thoughts on the theme. Starting with Mahesh. Mahesh, you have seen the transition, if I may say, right from the beginning, in a way, in India. So your initial thoughts, please.
Thank you, Sumantra. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be part of the ET Auto now as part of the World EV Day. I would like to say that in a broad picture, what are we doing? I think it is the purpose which is very important on what we are doing. India as a country has committed towards net zero by 2070. India is also leading the Solar Alliance, and there are a lot of commitments by Government of India and the society and the industry towards a sustainable energy and mobility. Today, if you look at decarbonizing mobility, EVs play a very important role in decarbonizing mobility in India. Mobility in India is a very different configuration when compared to the mobility in the West. It has multimodal transports. We have two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and public transport like buses. We need to look at how do we build the future of mobility through all of them in a decarbonized electric way. I would say just by electrification, we are not going to achieve what it is. And as a country, we need to look at how do we make in India, how do we have a multimodal transport, how do we bring public transport as a primary mode of transport to many of us in the city, and look at last mile and first mile mobility. And that's what I would look at on a World EV Day. And I would say that we have started towards the journey. Government, industry, and already society have started working very rigorously towards this initiative. I'm happy to be part of that as well.
Thank you, Mahesh. Diego, I mean, in your case, I mean, you are moving from what is seen as the dirty option of diesel to the clean option of electric. Your thoughts?
Thank you, Sumantra. Thank you, Nabil and ET Auto for inviting me today in this graceful occasion of World EV Day. For sure, the journey that we have seen just last couple of years in India and globally towards the electrification of mainly last mile mobility. And when I mean last mile, I mean small commercial vehicle, three-wheeler and two-wheeler, has been amazing and much beyond any positive expectation that we could have as an industry somehow 2 years ago. So if you see statistics of registration of new EV vehicles in the market in India, the statistics are saying that we will cross most probably 6 to 7 lakh of new two-wheeler, scooter mainly, and small motorbike by the end of this calendar year. And it was less than 1/10 of that only 1 year ago. And for what is concerned three-wheeler, now is a reality that nearly 50% of the new registration on a monthly basis of three-wheeler in India are now into electric. And we expect this percentage, this ratio to surpass in the next few months. And what is amazing and what is astonishing is definitely in how much short span of time all this thing happened. So definitely the road ahead, the way forward is full of hopes and positive expectation. I see personally few concerns that we need to take care in order to make this growth path even more effective. One definitely related to supply chain constraints and limitations. We expect by 2030 the capacity required for battery cell manufacturing in India will be beyond 100 gigawatt, and that is a big road ahead. Infrastructure for recharge of vehicle, we have currently 1.3 million EV vehicles running on Indian road every day, and 12,000 charging stations per year. And we expect this amount of vehicles to reach the minimum 50 to 70 million of vehicles by 2030. You can imagine how much is the investment expected going ahead to support this big mass of vehicles running on India road. Last point, important according to me, is to revise specification of vehicles. I give an example. For example, an average two-wheeler commuting scooter is running 30 to 40 kilometers per day. And so we have to see if giving such big capacity of and range autonomy, over dimensioning and over engineering the battery pack of the motor is strictly required, or if instead we can go for a more frugal engineering philosophy and provide customers something that is more tailor-made with their daily application and daily. So these are three important points that going forward we need to take care in order to make this growth path to full electrification of last mile mobility in India by 2030 really effective and positive with, how to say, successful participation of all stakeholders.
Thank you. Valid points there, Diego. Coming to Pankaj, Pankaj, any discussions around electric vehicle industry, supply chain comes on top, and within that, battery stroke cell. I would say the single most critical and the single most expensive part in an electric vehicle. And as in you and your peers in the industry, are play a very key role if India has to really have a largely indigenous, if not fully indigenous, EV ecosystem. So, your initial thoughts.
Thanks, Sumantra. I think thanks for inviting me to be at this forum. It's always great to see friends getting together. And I think what we're trying to do, all of us on these EV days, to create our own first principle understanding of what is it that we need to do to solve and bring the EV revolution in India. And I think, yeah, you've said it right. Supply chain, that's around battery cells. Uh, that is the 50% component of the entire of the vehicle. It kind of controls and guides how fast and how good the adoption would be. If you're able to make batteries which are suited for India, if you're able to make batteries at a price point which is suitable for India, if you're able to make batteries that is fundamentally able to solve the Indian requirement, I think there is no barrier after that for us to kind of go and ensure that India becomes the number one nation for leading the charge on EV adoption. If you look at if I dissect it, I think uh, at this point in time, definitely we are dependent on our supply chain of our cells. As we Log9 and some of the other companies which are getting into cell manufacturing, we would be dependent on raw materials that will come into this country for making those cells. Uh, I think in India we have an opportunity to really turbocharge our material science industry. India really has all the necessary ingredients, except let's say we don't have too much of lithium here, but the remaining stuff, like if you discount cobalt and lithium, you have more or less everything here to make a cell. So I think when the companies enter into cell manufacturing, what we need is to boot up India's basic manufacturing and material science. But moving very fast to the battery tech, I think what we have to build is batteries that will be extremely safe, because this is a country that has high temperatures, 45 degrees. So we have to create batteries for the safety. We also, what India is asking for is not what the US and Europe is asking. If you look at it, in Europe, in US, you're building batteries for range 300, 400, 500 kilometers. In India, we have to build smaller battery packs, something that can go 100 kilometers or 150 kilometers. But what India needs is fast charging, because we stay in an apartment. I park my vehicle 500 meters away on a busy street, and how am I going to get charging to that over a night time? So I need access to fast charge. Businesses are asking for fast charge, so we need to create battery packs and technologies that can fast charge. And last but not the least, India is a country that once it decides to adopt, it decides like anything. Look at what has happened with UPI. Look at what happened with mobile phones. So I think we have to create overlying IoT layers and telematics layer on top of it, so that people can monitor their vehicles through their mobile phone, get the health of the battery, and the adoption will happen. So I'm super happy, proud. It looks like an Independence Day for companies that are working on EV, the EV, and I
Indeed,
just
the right said there. Indeed, the mood and the kind of spirit is similar to what it is for a red letter day like the Independence Day, and this is a red letter day for the EV industry.
yeah, yeah.
And right said there. In fact, as I said, focus on material science, and also maybe the capabilities of applied research would be very critical as we go along. And you mentioned about some of the questions that need, some of the issues that need to be addressed. We'll come to that during the discussion. But let me bring in Nabil A. Khan, the editor of ET Auto. Over the last 2 months, Nabil has visited multiple locations in Europe and in the UK for events. Either they are exclusively around electric vehicles, or electric vehicle is a part of the event. So no, he let us hear from Nabil about what are his kind of observations there, and the insights that he got through his interactions with global industry leaders. Nabil.
Thank you, Sumo. Indeed, if you talk about the globe, entire globe is really kicked about electric vehicles, and now it's not that electric vehicle is something we are talking about going to come future. They are living it up now. People are selling good amount of EVs. If you talk about 2021, we sold over 6.6 million electric cars, and now in the first quarter itself, we have sold over 2.2 million electric cars. So that speaks the kind of demand it is generating. Talking about the countries like UK, there's a major transformation happening in terms of electric. You will see on the street busy with the electric charging stations, car park there being charged. So that's a now general phenomena that you will see across UK. Same is the situation in Europe. Every manufacturer is trying to change these manufacturing shop floors. They are trying to make it ultra flexible for all kind of vehicle to be built. One thing that I have noticed after this all geopolitical situation that has erupted after Russia and Ukraine war is that there is some kind of unsaid reluctance in terms of what earlier people were talking about. 2030 will have all electric vehicles. There seems to be a bit of reluctance. People are not clearly speaking, but they feel that the electric vehicle may not be 100% by 2030, but yes, the number, the way it is catching up, it is quite very much like our expectation. That's what I feel. Most of the manufacturer, traditional manufacturers, are trying to form collaborations with variety of suppliers or the value chain provider, be it in the battery, be it in the technology. In Japan, you see it's Suzuki, Denso, and all that have come, 4 or 5 experts in their field, and they are trying to develop platform. You have seen Indian manufacturers like Mahindra going along with Volkswagen, developing a platform for EV. So a lot of collaboration, a lot of now real action is happening, and even the investors are very keen and looking forward to investing. I met a lot of investors in Dubai last week, and in the UK also. I see that they all are talking about sustainable mobility and sustainability per se. So where mobility comes as one of the big ticket investments. So that's the scenario. It's now I think EV day is every day now. It's time we'll have to celebrate ICE day, because I see that one is taking a back seat. I'm sure in the next 4 to 5 years globally, we'll see that the older technology that we had will be taken over by the new guys, that is EV. So I see the baton being passed on to the EV. And but the other aspect that I see, we have been talking about, Pankaj talked about materials and all that is becoming very important. But what we see right now, EV or the chemistry, battery chemistry, or the way we are electrifying these vehicles will completely change. Because I met a lot of scientists, spoke to them. There's a lot of new technology that is coming up that we don't even talk about right now. Solid state looks like will happen very soon, but there are a lot of different kind of methods by which we will be probably electrifying the vehicle. That is probably 2 years 3 years down the line, we'll be talking about something very different. So that's what my key takeaway is from the visit to various places. I also went to Switch Mobility's factory in Warwick and met Andy. So there's a lot of action happening. Daimler plant has completely changed. They have, on the same line, they are making BEV, they are making pure electric, hybrid, ICE, everything. All the future factories are completely changing and being more and more adaptable to electric vehicles. So that speaks that now it has happened already. And anytime we'll see that, ICE will be going away and the EV will be taking the baton forward if we talk about the future.
Thank you, Nabil. And right said, there is a swift adoption of EVs happening globally. And even if you look at India also, if you look at, let's say, the passenger vehicle space, in FY19, the annual figure was to the tune of about 2,000. In FY22, it's more than 20,000, around 22 odd thousand. And in the first 5 months of this financial year, it has already crossed 20,000. That's the kind of growth rate that's happening. And as rightly said, exponential growth is is what will be the norm in the EV space, at least for the foreseeable future. Well said.
The
And
best thing I have seen one thing. Sorry to interject. Pankaj was mentioning that for India, it's more like you need to have a fast charging more often, and you do not need really high density batteries. Range is not a problem. Definitely for certain segment like two wheeler, three wheeler, where acquisition cost is still very important for the owners or the buyers. But India, you see, the Indian consumer has also moved up many steps. Look at ICE vehicles also, the average selling price has gone up tremendously. So that has given appetite for the car buyers also. So electric car buyer, I think that most of the car makers are focusing on higher range, and I'm sure people are ready to pay. The way you have seen some of the product that are there in the market has been very well accepted. So I think for EV, India is no more an affordable or value affordable market, but value for money market. That's what I'll say. If you have value, people are ready to shell out any amount. So that is further going to boost up with electrification. That's what I observe in India.
indeed, indeed, value for money, not necessarily the most affordable. And also at this stage, at this point, I would also like to welcome all the attendees of this very special panel discussion who are joining us through various social media channels of ET Auto. By the way, gentlemen, we are all going live through all our various social media channels. So please, to all the attendees, I would request, in case, please take this opportunity to also throw questions for the esteemed panelists. It's a very rare opportunity. So now, and as and when I notice them, I will pick them up and pass it on to the panelists. And also, do watch out for the World EV Day special coverage on ET Auto. We have already started with, as Nabil Khan said, an exclusive interview with global industry veteran and CEO and Vice Chairman of Switch Mobility, Dr. Andy Palmer. It's already online. So more to follow during the course of the day. Do watch out for that. And now let's start the discussion, starting with Pankaj. Why I'm starting with you is because the theme is about building a self-sufficient supply chain, and you talked about materials. And okay, there are developments happening for sure, and that has to be applauded. The intent of various kind of efforts, both from the government and industry, has to be recognized. But at the same time, we need to do a very strong reality check on what are the things that need to be addressed fast, if not yesterday, maybe today, and not wait for tomorrow. One of them is, I guess, people like you are struggling to find, let's say, certain materials which are produced in large quantities, huge quantities in India. But when it comes to, let's say, applicability or usability in EVs, specifically the batteries, you struggle. For example, let's say aluminum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Sumant, you hit the nail on the head. जब ये देश आज़ाद हुआ था, which is the independence, what we talked about it, there are certain things that we decided that we will do, which was, with independence comes this self-reliance is a goal when you get independent. And for us, we need to attain a certain level of self-reliance in our technologies. And I mean, supply chain is always one of the trickiest thing in manufacturing. You will always have somebody supplying stuff to you. But won't it be great if all the supply chain can be somehow sorted within this country. There are certain things for which we are dependent internationally, and there's no escaping that fact. For example, let's start with the components which seems very obvious, with which we for which the supply chain is very very tricky. Silica, for example, is a very important component. We all write our battery management systems, all the hardware chips, are all been written on silica. And we don't have fabs in India. We don't have, we don't make our own chips. We design our own chips really, really well. And as the global demand is escalating, India is not a very big buyer of those chips for the electric vehicle right now. There are other countries which are buying it. So we do get a second preference when we go out international market. The rates are very different. And for any company to scale up and ensure that the customers are not left high and dry, we need to sort that out. We go one step lower to that. I think what we need to do is create even basic, for example, when we're building batteries. You'd be surprised when I'm building my batteries, when I try and look for a supplier for my battery harnesses, my wires. These are not something, very complicated fabs, but wires is something that we should be making in India. But I still don't have a standardized supply partners in India. Very, very strong. There are a few when we're buying it from them, but there aren't many. So what I'm saying is an EV, when you go to simple things like fasteners, like wires, like basic fuses and architectures and materials, it becomes tricky. At least for the basic stuff, we should not go out. We should be able to do that in India. For
Right.
chips, definitely we're dependent.
Correct. And rightly said. I mean, while it's very important to kind of localize advanced technologies, we should not also overlook the sometimes there's a tendency to kind of overlook the very basics. And in this case, something as basic as a wiring harness. I'll come to you again, Pankaj. Mahesh, now again, this day would be apt to kind of really take a look at where we have, how far India has come. Applaud, as I said, what we have achieved, and also take stock of the hits and misses. Because unless we look at the not so pleasant gaps or the misses, we will not be able to advance, and much less fast forward, which is necessary. So from the NEMMP days to FAME 1 to FAME 2, PLI, how would you kind of define this period? And now, from taking what are the learnings from these, which will help us to really propel India forward, and the supply chain especially at the pace which is required for India if it really wants to be a global EV hub.
Yeah, Sumantra, you rightly put the context in one. I think any change or shift in technology should happen between the policymakers, industry, and the adoption by society by itself, that the consumers. It has to address all the needs. We can't address just one need. As you rightly said, NEMP started off with direction towards emission reduction and towards making that, and then FAME 1 came in very specifically covering both BEVs and even hybrids, more of a demand incentive. And then we took a pause as a policymakers and industry, and then said, what are we doing? Are we learning something from other industries? And if we continue to bring in technologies from outside and just localize it, or just take a time to localize it, it's not going to help. So basically, FAME 2 addressed towards Make in India. It clearly said out of the 2025 components what needs to be made, at what time period. So there were incentives linked towards value addition in India. I think it's a very important perspective, direction, and shift taken by the policymakers, and industry responded to it. And what is more important is most of the Indian OEMs have invested and stood with the government towards Atmanirbhar Bharat on making India, like Mahindra's, Tata's, Ashok Leyland's, and others. So we stood along with the government and invested to get the technologies in. Now, if you look at the stock of the situation today, I think most of the two-wheelers were getting some, what I would say, a lot of kits from neighboring countries, and assembling have shifted towards making in India. Three-wheelers, as you know, is already most of the parts are today made in India except the cell. If you look at our bus, except the cell, again, most of the parts are made in India. So slowly the ecosystem is building up in India. But I would say that we have just scratched the surface. It's very small. We are just thinking inward. It's very small for even the PLI. Let's look at it. Government is doing, don't mistake me wrong, government is doing substantial work which any other government is not doing on PLI, whether it is auto PLI or ACC PLI or electronics PLI. Government has understood the way to incentivize, to bring in investment in industry, which will make components to build up this ecosystem. It's the right thing to do. But let me tell you the opportunity. We are talking about 50 gigawatt of cell making in India, right? In the PLI. I'll just let you know the number. If electrification in Europe happens as per the plan or as per the prediction in next 3 to 5 years, they need 2,000 gigawatt of battery packs. And you know what's that? According to my knowledge, they are having plans to install about 980 gigawatts of battery pack or battery cell manufacturing in the country. So where is the remaining 1,000 going to come? It's going to come either from outside the country. You know which country is going to come from. Why not India look at the next step? We started off well. We realigned the policy. Now we are in the right direction. But now we need to really scale up. If we don't scale up and only talk about what we have done in the past, I think we will lose the game. So that's the huge opportunity. I would like to see the supply chain of India playing substantial value addition on the global auto supply chain, not just India's Atmanirbhar Bharat. So you need to probably, we need to probably shift the focus and say, now I've done Atmanirbhar. Now I'm going to play a very important role in supply chain globally. And that's how I'm going to sustain and put India in the map of the global EV on this EV day. That's how we should look at that. That would be my path going forward.
Very aptly put, Mahesh. I mean, as expected, you have seen the transition in the Indian EV industry. And while certain steps have already taken, realignment has happened, taking the learnings, we have to keep moving fast if India really wants to really not miss the bus like in some of the other industries, and be a global hub. Diego, I mean, Piaggio, of course, has a global play. When it comes to India, you have started off on the three-wheeler segment, electrifying your three-wheelers. And three-wheelers, as we all know, along with two-wheelers, are kind of really driving the EV adoption in India. What are the hurdles that you think, or the gaps that needs to be addressed today, if not yesterday, maybe?
Well, in terms of, as I said at the beginning, I think that the opportunity for transition to EV and last mile mobility in India is immense for multiple reasons. Due to increase of fuel price, diesel, CNG, petrol, definitely this kind of solution, we look mainly at three-wheeler and two-wheeler, are definitely the part by far the more affordable as of now in terms of customer perspective, cost of ownership, and whatever. So I think that the prerequisite, plus all this, we are mentioning also the level of policies and incentives that are, helping the diffusion of EV space is also another very important positive factor. So free to scheme, local state policies, now PLI scheme, then hopefully very soon a battery swap policy. All these, intervention from authorities are definitely helping to create the ecosystem going forward. I think that there are definitely two, and as far as the short or mid-term perspective, and when I say short mid-term perspective, I mean mainly the next 2 or 3 years down the line. I think that there are mainly two areas that still need to have a specific focus. One, I do not want to repeat, definitely is the supply chain. Supply chain in India for multiple reasons. How I agree that here all the know-how capabilities are widely available. but still the capacity of the level of investment put by multiple players in order to create the capacity enough to support the growing demand is still not there. This is a matter of fact. From one side, the capacity installed at vendor side, and on the other side, still the dependence on sub-components that are coming from out of India. And I agree with one of my fellow panelists was saying before, at the moment when you go to big international producer and manufacturer of microchip, for sure when they see demand coming from Indian players, they are not put into priority list. They prefer to give priority to other kind of application out of India. These are the two main limitations that I see as per my personal experience here in India is as of now. The second area that requires specific focus definitely is infrastructure for recharge. Independently if you talk about fixed battery or battery swap. So both these two kind of solutions require a specific focus in order to create the ecosystem so that this vehicle can fly and run on the road effectively. I personally believe that battery swap is one solution that could even more positively fast track the introduction of EV, mainly in three-wheeler and two-wheeler space, not in other sector. Honestly speaking, I think that the three-wheeler and two-wheeler are fertile ground for battery swap, not passenger car, bus, and other, because due to the complication of the battery swap operation. But again, if you want to go for this kind of solution, even more the issue of the infrastructure for recharge and for battery swap is definitely a concern. Because investment is definitely much higher. You have to create the pool of battery to, how to say, circulate the vehicles effectively without, how to say, interruption of operation and so on and so on. So these two areas, I see personally that is the immediate priorities that require specific intervention in the short mid-term. Last but not least, I would also add a third point that is the creation of the specific skill ecosystem that is specifically meant for EV mobility. And when I mean skill, I mean not only skill for designing, for producing, but also skill for servicing and maintaining. One of the biggest, how to say, concern that we have to face when creating a specific EV dealer network for our two-wheeler was to create specific training for mechanics in the ground that are not at all used to service this kind of vehicle. And so this is definitely the consumer experience doesn't stop at the moment in which you sell the vehicle, but continue when the vehicle is running on India road and need to be serviced properly or assisted properly. So this kind of skill ecosystem also is the third point that we have to, as an industry, we need to take care particularly going forward.
Okay. Is that the reason, as in the not so favorable skilled ecosystem that is posing as a hurdle for Piaggio's entry into the electric two-wheeler space in India?
No, not for what is concerned. Not for what is concerned us specifically. I mean, in general, what I see in terms of shared experience with customers. For example, we have not yet entered two-wheeler electric, and before entering, we have done a specific assessment of which are potentially the concern if we want to enter this space. Well, one of the first points that came out was the unpreparation of the current service network for servicing this kind of vehicle. This is definitely an area, if you want to enter this space, we need to take care anticipately so that when launching a vehicle, our service network is very well trained and prepared.
So, by when can we expect Piaggio's entry in that space? Soon. Okay. Coming to Nabil, I mean, you heard what Diego was saying, and if I were to ask you any kind of observation that you made, which could serve as a observation that you made overseas, which could serve as a lesson for for the Indian EV industry ecosystem to kind of pick and maybe adopt. I know it's not a one size fits all approach when it comes to technology, but certain practices, certain approaches, certain policies maybe, which can be, kind of taken as a lesson and implemented here.
So I don't know if it is a very generic observation that I would like to bring in here. I spoke to a couple of multinational electric vehicle manufacturer, or you can say automakers, who are now strong in electric vehicles, especially in the public sector unit. So they have been equivocally, unanimously pointing this out, that the way we acquire all these public sector buses or the vehicles, we are too much focusing on acquisition cost when the government is acquiring these buses. So why are we not looking at the long term, profitability, or you can say the operational cost also, the life cycle of the vehicle, the rounds it could do, the range it could provide, or in the long term operators benefit. But we are focusing largely on, on the acquisition cost, which at times, compromises on the quality part. This was one of the, unanimous observation made by most of these, European manufacturers. So that was one point. Second, I just want to add on India's advantage that we can offer to the world. Or India should explore that, since we do not have much of the current raw materials. We have a huge opportunity in terms of getting into recycling. So that's the biggest opportunity India can have, and India can probably become strong there. The second part everybody talks about the software side of the business, where we have always been, strong. We are already the exporter of IT services, one of the largest exporters. So these are the two, field which is recycling, that we think internally we can develop that forte. IT is already looked upon us. People see us as a backbone for the global IT. So with connectivity and all this, becoming more prevalent in EV, I think that's one area where we can work. That's these are the two, largely comment that I would like to make at this point in time. Thank you, Anandji, for joining us today. So lovely to see Anandji now. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank.
Thank you very much. Hi,
Welcome.
Sumantra, Diego,
Hi.
Mahesh. Hi, Pankaj. Hi, Nabil.
There,
Hi.
Anand, another very strong proponent of EVs now. In his current role as Vice President, Operations, Product Line, and Purchase and Supplier Quality at Tata Passenger Electric Mobility. Once again, a warm welcome to you, Anand. Uh, yes, and Nabil, as you rightly said, as the automobile, as we have known so far, becomes increasingly software driven in the electric mobility era, that also provides India a good opportunity to really kind of bolster its position in the global automotive industry. Uh, Anand, a quick kind of update in terms of what we have discussed so far. We also took stock of where do we stand currently. I mean, if looking at from the India's journey from, let's say, the NEMMP policy phase to FAME 1 to FAME 2 and all the PLIs, and also commending for all the achievements, at the same time taking a doing a reality check of what are the gaps that need to be filled at the earliest, in order to really kind of tap the opportunities and not really miss the bus in the EV sector also, like in the case like what we have done. I mean, it was an unfortunate miss in some other sectors, but now things that need to be taken care of now before it is too late. And all of us, by the way, so your industry peers have also kind of shared that today it's like we are getting into this discussion almost in the spirit of commemorating a red letter day, like Independence Day.
True.
Your initial thoughts on the theme of really, building a self-sufficient Indian EV ecosystem, self-sufficient Indian EV ecosystem, in terms of where do we stand, and what do we need to address immediately, and really, capitalize on the opportunity which this whole megatrend kind of provides to the Indian to India.
So thanks, Sumantra, and apologies at the outset because I had something else that I needed to absolutely be in until 12:30. But on the occasion of World EV Day, uh, a, a, a very sort of passionate and warm greetings from our side to all the people here on this occasion. On the domestic EV supply chain, Sumantra, what I think is, uh, you need to look at a large number of factors in order to do this, and some of these factors could be in terms of the availability of technical assessment, technical capabilities, and when you look at this, it's about the right level of engineers and the right number of people to be able to develop these components. The second thing is also about capacity, availability of raw materials, availability of components, and the necessary knowledge and awareness, the technical competence for being able to do that. Uh, it's an important part to understand that when any place needs to grow in terms of a local supply chain, then you also need to have infrastructure in terms of test equipment, in terms of test facilities, and in terms of validation capabilities to be able to grow on that, because else you wouldn't be able to scale that up only on the basis of the degrees of competence. One additional aspect, and I don't want to stir up a hornet's nest here, but an additional aspect is also a stability in a regime in terms of regulation. Uh, and I'm sure when the panel would have discussed the journey from any MVP to Fame 1, Fame 2, it's been absolutely progressive and in the right stage to sort of trigger the right kind of inputs from the industry and build it. A similar way will have to be done even in case of the regulatory regime when it comes to standards, guidelines, regulations, these kind of things. We cannot have it needs to be progressive, it needs to be stable, and of course one important aspect is, while the PLI scheme is absolutely fantastic in terms of large players such as the people here, it also needs to come up for smaller players, because at the end of the day, it is the smaller players who constitute various components that would also be critical in terms of being able to provide the impetus for the local value chain addition that has to happen. So we need to look at it very holistically. It cannot be only at one end, or it cannot be only in one specific area. Uh, while saying all this is good, let me also tell you very briefly that because of the interest that's seen coming from the market and the adoption rates, which are probably higher than what some of the most optimistic estimates would have projected only as recently as 3.5, 4 years back. I think many players are gearing up to do this. There is recognition of the fact that all of this needs to happen in sync, in tandem, rather than in isolation. And even as we speak today, there's a huge amount of interest, and not only interest, but interest getting converted into actions. So I feel if this pace continues, there is no reason for. I mean, as a country, we've spoken about software being our strength, the ability to innovate being our strength. So there's no reason why we cannot scale this up, uh, and therefore stability in terms of regulations, in terms of the policies, which is already there to a certain extent, and continued push is what will make us achieve this in a fairly short period of time. And I think it's not because we are on this panel, but I think the future is absolutely positive. There's no doubt on that.
Indeed, and it's no longer the statement that the future is electric is no longer perhaps applicable now, because it's now the it's already getting electrified at a much swift pace. And now staying with you, Anand, since you also talked about the regulatory regime and the absolute importance or value of sustainable, kind of regulatory regime. Now, I mean, if you look at what is the latest, the notified battery safety norms, uh, the general feedback is that while it is very good intent, and but in terms of the applicability and the timeline, perhaps it is there is room for some kind of tweaking. Maybe it's not maybe applicable as is notified.
So I'll just try and while everybody on the panel would be aware, but for the benefit of the audience and to sort of put our perspective, the provisions that have been included in the amendment, there are 16 odd provisions. I think most of the players already comply with a fairly large number of those requirements. And there are a couple of requirements where we will need further discussions. There are discussions already on, and I think all of us have to actually say that how do we make this entirely safe. I think the industry is united in being able to say that we need safety, and therefore it's a welcome step to do it in the proper way. There might be certain elements which might need some more deliberations in terms of the nuances of what exactly is meant and how do we want to establish that. So that's currently under discussion, and I think I should probably not comment more on what the other discussions are at this point of time. It would be safe to say that we are all wanting to do this in the safest, best possible manner. Some discussions obviously will happen on the nuances.
Right. Mahesh, your point of view on that, the deadline of no, the timeline of 1st October, perhaps a little too aggressive is what some people say, that it's not from the applicability, it's not very practical.
Sumantra, I think we'll have to look at what is the intent rather than getting into more details. The intent of the panel or the recommendation is to how to bring more reliable, robust, safe battery packs to the market. I think that the intent was very, very welcome, and that is the right thing to do. And
but if you don't meet the norms by 1st October, then you have problem there.
Yeah, I said, like Ananda said, now industry has to sit down and work on this. See, most of the times intent has to get converted into action. Now, how do we do action? I have seen this recommendation. It is a very meaningful recommendation. It is in the right direction, because if any standard you come, I think we need to understand. You need a test method, you need a acceptance criteria, and you need a way forward. So most of them looks to be more of an intent, and some of them have standards. Some of them are yet to be linked to standards. So as industry, we'll work with them. We'll find a way out that what is ready with us and what needs to take action. What are all the test procedures available in India? What has to be equipped quickly? And I don't think it will be a big issue. It is a matter of time. We will sit down and sort this out between the industry as well as on the policymakers.
Okay. What's the feedback you're getting from the government? Is the deadline likely to get revised?
So they are happy to discuss with us, understand, we appreciate their intent, and we will support their intent. They are also open to discuss with us on the how to make this intent into reality and how fast we have to make it. So we'll have to work together to make this happen.
Got it. Diego, as a representative of a global OEM, just curious to understand now, how does an organization like Piaggio see India when it comes to its overall sustainability as a global organization in the electrification era? Is the value of the, let's say, or the presence of Piaggio in India will be leveraged further more in order to help its overall sustainability in terms of maybe as a technology development base, of course, as a market as well?
Well, for sure, in the sense that the opportunity that we see here in India in terms of business development for electric mobility is, as we said, is immense due to the lot of prerequisite of background situation that we have. Plus, this combined with the fact that cost of, say, manufacturing of this kind of solution in India is still and is going to be even by far the more convenient, combined with the high level of technology available now that I agree from certain perspective is superior to the one that we can find, for example, in China as of now. These two factors combined together definitely will help to make India a manufacturing hub globally for production and exporting of EV solution, mainly in three-wheeler and two-wheeler space. It's also a fact that the currency exchange rate between, for example, Chinese renminbi and euro now is not favorable. One instead for rupee is very much favorable. So this kind of, how to say, condition are making it more convenient to produce back globally. So definitely Piaggio is looking at this opportunity going forward. And we see in the next 3-5 years, but not only Piaggio, I'm sure that many other players are, how to say, evaluating to shift production from China or Southeast Asia to India going forward. We have already got that. So I think it's a general trend that will continue and will foster growth even more in future.
Right. Anand, coming to you, I mean, Tata Motors, I mean, a little while ago announced the expansion of its EV portfolio with the introduction of the electrified version of the Tiago as well. Interesting development there because if you look at the overall industry segment also, that is the most, how would I say, perhaps in terms of price sensitivity, it's the highest there. So what's the appetite you see basis, what's the customer appetite you expect there basis your overall, kind of experience with what about over 40,000 customers for your electrics so far? So I'm sure something must have indicated to you, yes, that there is a opportunity in that segment also, despite it being a little bit more price sensitive. What's the scope you see for the Tiago EV in terms of, let's say, its penetration as an
Yeah,
electric?
I'll
Just to
just
add, Sumo, just to add, and also it is being touted as the cheapest electric cars. So can you a bit give us a sense at what price range you will call it a cheapest electric car or
it,
most
it, it,
affordable electric car for India?
Nabir, it is the most affordable, most inexpensive car, not the cheapest car.
Yeah, yeah, affordable. I correct myself.
Yeah, but no problems. So I just want to say, I want to give you two data points. So in the products that we have electric option today, we are seeing there's a over 25% booking interest in an electrified version. Yeah, and this has happened with the Nexon. This is happening with the Tigor, and therefore we have to expand this portfolio of choices. The more choices that people have, there will always be people who will go for certain specific use cases. And if you have a large percentage of cars being sold in that particular segment, then you shouldn't be surprised at achieving a similar penetration levels in that segment as well. Mahesh will probably agree with me that the challenge of making a electric car at the lower end is significantly higher. It's a challenge from our side. It's not a challenge from the market side, and therefore, if we are able to somehow solve the problems that we have, solve the challenges that we have, then for sure there will be use cases which the market might be able to put cars to, and they will absolutely appreciate that. It will also mean that you make electric vehicles accessible to a set of market or to a set of users which hadn't really thought about that electrification would become accessible. And that in itself is what I would say, Sumantra, a democratization of the EVs. And therefore this is our attempt of trying to do that. Let's see how the market is going to sort of accept this. There are certain challenges that you have to overcome. For example, it has to have a reasonably good performance. It has to have a reasonably good range. It has to have a reasonably good warranty and durability and assurance from a safety perspective. But if you're able to bring all these things together, uh, it would be a fantastic thing. and that's what is the attempt. So let's see how it goes. You'll get to hear more from us in the coming days, but that's the announcement that we had today.
In terms of the range, which is the most crucial factor from a consumer's perspective after the acquisition cost, of course, ballpark figure, what could be the range that you would be? Understood. Anand, I
May
think
I
no,
ask one question, Sumo, if you could allow?
please.
Just want to understand from the panel how I've seen globally people are now seeing, delay in terms of the pace or the amount of electrification that we were talking about after this all, Russia and Ukraine thing, and the way the raw material prices, the way it was dropping, it has been arrested. We see a reverse cycle also, where in some cases some of the raw materials for the battery has gone up also. In such a scenario, do you see there is going to be some bit of delay, and what kind of delay do you expect in terms of the previous, expectation or forecast that we had for electrification of variety of vehicles that we'll have in India and globally? What's your thought? Mahesh, will start with you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nabil. I think it is fair to say any industry will go through turbulence. If we expect that electrification of cars or mobility will happen without any hindrance, I think we are underestimating what it is. So, as you rightly said, global turbulence will come. Geopolitics will play a role. Of course, raw material and policy making will play a role. Industries investment will play a role. So all of them are going to play a different percentage in which the adoption is going to come. Ultimately, finally, the consumers must be able to afford to get it. Finally, you may create a exorbitantly best product which is affordable, but if customers India's GDP and per capita income is not growing as it is, then you can't do it. So it has to be the society's willingness to adapt or affordability to adapt, industries' appetite to invest, government's will to create policies, and geopolitics which will favor India. All of them have to come together, and all of them are not going to be at the same pace going forward. But the good news is today we have an ecosystem, whether it is industry, consumers, policy, we are ready to prepare the challenges. We are ready to understand and discuss together and create solutions for the future. That is the right platform we need to live in, and I'm happy that on this World EV Day, we are at the right platform where we are engaged with the right people, and there is an open, what I would say, mind in which we are discussing policies, getting support to industry. Industry is discussing with, engaging with consumers, and how we are adapting to cleaner, safer way of mobility. I would say that this challenge is going to be continuous, and we are only prepared for facing it going forward.
So,
Right.
we were talking about, that. Sorry, Sumo, I'm just curious to ask this question. We were talking about, the cost parity in terms of acquisition of electric vehicle and ICE vehicle almost becoming equal around this time or a year later. How late are we going to be now in terms of that, in terms of acquisition cost? How far late? How much delay it is going to be?
Nabil, if you ask me, I'm not a big proponent of EV coming at the same level of the cost of diesel or gasoline. I think that is not the intent. I think we'll have to look at total cost of ownership. So we'll have to move from acquisition cost to looking at total cost of ownership. That's where we are doing with consumers. Let's say in commercial vehicles, people understood it, and they are moving away from acquisition cost to a total cost of ownership. Three-wheeler success story is when we launched the Trio, we said that we will have a 30% adoption by 2025. Everybody laughed. And you know that we are already in 2022 crossed more than 30%, just because of total cost
But
of
the
ownership.
market size also shrunk
That's
significantly.
fine. That's fine. It
Percentage
will grow
wise,
up. It will grow up. It will grow up. But the issue is we proved the total cost of ownership, whether it is commercial vehicles and so on and so forth. So commercial vehicle will have a different approach to prove total cost of ownership. like Anand has said, we'll have to look at personal vehicles to look at value for money for people who are buying it and creating value, because personal vehicle is never going to achieve total cost of ownership in a short period of time. So each one will have a different approach, and industry is working to achieve this approach. And I am not a believer of cost parity. I am a believer of TCO parity, and in fact, better TCO of EV when compared to fossil fuel vehicles. That's what I would look at.
Anand and Diago can comment on the same.
Yeah, last words, gentlemen. We have just run out of time. So last words from you, Anand and Diego. Starting with Anand. I think there was some disruption there at Anand's connection, but Diego, you can go ahead, please.
It's the point is very point. Give you my perspective in terms of, I agree with Mahesh that you have to look at electrification last mile mobility. You have to think in a different perspective, not in terms of cost of acquisition, but cost of ownership. And it is a matter of fact that during 2022, due to multiple reasons, Bar 6 regulation, increase of fuel prices for IC solution. I was saying we were reaching more or less the parity between EV and IC solution. Now the challenge that I see going forward personally for 2023 is that the same phenomena that we have seen in IC, at least in the three-wheeler industry, in the last couple of years, will happen now in EV. And we have already some hints on that. I'm mentioning mainly the new regulation, battery regulation, that definitely thought may be sustainable from a technical point of view, is questionable in terms of cost impact. Plus, that how the intent is sacrosanct, but for sure it will have an impact in terms of cost as well. Sacrosanct was the intent to introduce Bar 6 regulation for IC. And secondly, most importantly, when we see capacity and the diffusion of EV solution in the market, suddenly we have started seeing a huge request of cost increase from vendors that for specific EV solutions. So my fear is that in 2023 it will happen for EV exactly what we have seen in the last couple of years for IC, and this is something that absolutely we have to avoid. So over-regulation and increase of cost coming from vendor is definitely one dark cloud that I see over electrification of last mile mobility, at least for the next couple of years.
Okay. Thank you. Last word from you, Anand, and Pankaj. I think Pankaj, there's some disruption in his line, but
Yeah,
I'm going to get back. Anand,
so there was a problem in my connection, but I've joined back now, and I hope you're able to hear me loud and clear.
Yes. Yes.
I think Nabil, that because of the changes in the commodity prices, and there's been a rough year and a half. There's no doubt that there have been challenges. But to the question that you asked, whether of parity, I think, like Mahesh said, I tend to concur with that. It's the total cost of ownership that has to be looked at. But when we look at total cost of ownership, also there is a innate requirement from customers that the total cost of ownership should be feasible. And this is about passenger cars that I'm speaking. So please accept those classifications. The expectation is that people wouldn't want to wait for 8 years, 5 years, 6 years for those total cost of ownership benefits to be realizable, because in any case that's a point that people would want to change cars. So if it is within a reasonable period, say about 18 months to 24 months of normal usage, then people do not mind. And while there have been challenges, it's still hovering around that period. We will have to find better solutions, and we hope that this is just a minor blip in an overall otherwise scenario. And I think this is something that the industry has to anyway gear up for, because you can't establish something only in a downward trend. Of course, battery prices fell down for about 10 years before they spiked up last year. So we're still, I think we've got to take in our stride and move forward. Once the benefits beyond only total cost of ownership become evident, which it will with higher level of exposure, ownership, then it becomes the norm. The second point that I also want to tell you is that you are looking at, when you look at parity, you are looking at or expecting that the emission standards would remain the same. Trying to go higher on the emission standards, ICE vehicles by themselves are going to have a lot of investment that needs to be done, and that sort of closes the gap, I would say, in between electrics and ICE vehicles to a certain extent. So I think the overall story is still intact. We need to look at it differently. There has been a period of difficulty the last year and a half, and maybe there's further more pain. But overall, I think we're still on track.
Okay, that's good to know. It's on track. Yes, there are some. There have been some disruptions and some challenges on the way. Some challenges remain still within India, and some no, due to geopolitical reasons, as all my Nabil also mentioned. But overall, there is a consensus that industry will have to take it upon itself to kind of really play its role. And propel India forward in this electric mobility era. Government stable, well-designed government policies will play a very, very crucial role, as expected across the world, at least in the first decade or so. And of course, I'm sure industry players, be it Piaggio or Switch or Tata Motors and others, are already kind of designing their model to be not to be self-reliant and not be dependent on policies in the long term. But for anything new, there is an important role that the governments will have to play, and with, as I mentioned, smart and sustainable solutions. We are just waiting for Pankaj to log in before we kind of log off from this session. We have already overshot the time, and not surprising that we have time ran out. I mean, because the conversation and the discussion has been so engaging and interesting, and of course on a very important subject like a sustainable, self-sufficient Indian EV ecosystem. Anything that you would like to share, Nabil, before we log off? And
Uh, I have nothing much to say when experts are there. Just curious to understand. A lot of people say that NMC is a better, more reliable option, though it is slightly uh, pricier, costlier than LFP. Just want to hear from you all. How do you see this statement? Anand, then
Yeah, so
Mahesh.
let me go first because you know uh, I don't think that it's every chemistry, I would say, has pros and cons, and you just need to look at which chemistry is better for that specific use case. When you look at India, it's a hot market. It's a nascent market. It's something that needs to add confidence to a lot of people, and there's a lot of attention around what's happening in this area, disproportionate attention, if I may say. Therefore, I would say it is better to go with safety, and therefore our choices have been around LFP, which we think is a safer way to manage things, at least in the initial first period. Nothing against anything else, but we think LFP is a safer chemistry.
Many argue that NMC is equally or better in many cases. Sorry, Mahesh ji, what's your thought?
This question is worth a debate for 1 hour next session. So why can't you reserve it for the next?
yes, indeed, indeed,
Thank you.
we'll have a special discussion around this. And as I understand, speaking to another OE the other day, the cost factor is also playing a role. And if I'm not wrong, at the cell level, the price difference is to the tune of 10-15% the lower than NMC. And of course, the safety factor, when it's not a hard and fast rule, but like tropical climates like India, and its LFP is relatively inherently more preferable, and in a colder climate, it's not exclusive to that. But on that note, I think I would request my colleague Shatish to let Pankaj in if I think he's joined back.
Sumantra and Nabil, I have to leave.
Okay, I think now at this point, I think it's also time for us to wrap up this very, very engaging, interesting, and insightful discussion. Mahesh, thank you very much for sparing your time from your personal time, actually, and really appreciate it from a personal commitment that you have spared time to be with us and shared your valuable insights and comments and viewpoints. Always a pleasure talking to you, Mahesh. Thank you very much. And you can log off if you need to. But last words from you, Pankaj. We were just about to wrap up.
Thank you, Sumant. I think fantastic conversation. The only thing that I have that's bursting through my body, mind, energy, and soul is that EV is here to stay. I'm just supercharged that it's happening at a rate which is faster than what we've expected. All the systems and the traffic signals are green for us to get EV adopted in this country. I think we will work very closely with the government for policy making. Supply chain is something that we are all, working towards sorting it out. And the choice of technology, like what Anand talked about it, we are all taking the right choice of the right chemistry technology. So next year when we get together on this EV day, the statistics will be much different than what we have today, and I'm looking forward to building it with everyone here in this audience and in this conversation.
Indeed,
Bingo.
indeed, as you said, the time is absolutely conducive. Anand, you were saying something?
No, I said absolutely aligned with what Pankaj said. Bingo.
Right, great there. And what better note to end this very special panel discussion on this very special day, especially for the EV industry. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Nabil, Diego, Anand, Pankaj, really appreciate you taking your time out and wishing you all the very best and your industry peers on behalf of ET Auto. And of course, ET Auto will be there to keep a track of all the key developments in this industry. And we will meet again very soon on another discussion platform. And of course, till next World EV Day, we'll take stock of where things have moved and how far we have gone. So on that note, best wishes to all and take care. Goodbye and stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.